The government has to identify federal land where a house meets the criteria of affordable, meaning not too expensive for that city and state. The demand for that particular type of housing product generally needs to suit the area in which it's being built at the same time as the Federal Reserve begins a rate cut cycle, while making sure not to reignite inflation by somehow ordering 50% more windows, lumber, siding, roofing, concrete, cabinets, drywall, insulation, electrical, plumbing, etc., 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 than have ever been purchased in the United States housing building history every year for the next 4 years. I think they can do it. Welcome to the Nashville Money Guys YouTube channel. My name is Brandon McDonald, and today I'm going to make a video that has nothing to do with politics at all. It simply has to do with the logistics of, can we actually have the federal government attempt to build 3 million additional housing units in the United States? And if the answer is yes, how long is it actually going to take to get it done before we have some super huge downside negatives, such as reigniting inflation or stealing all of the labor from every single residential home builder that currently exists in the United States? As I started thinking through the process of what this would actually mean, there is some wild unintended consequences. So stick with me through the video because some of these are going to be very surprising. Several small little things that would add up to be something that would really, really inconvenience the rest of Americans that are trying to do renovating or trying to potentially build a new house that doesn't fall in the category of affordable housing. Let's just start with an easy imaginary city where there is a need for affordable housing. They have identified a piece of federal land that generally is going to suit the area around it. So like it's generally kind of a residential neighborhood. I'm literally skipping ahead 18 months in the process because think about how difficult that is to find a suitable piece of federal land in a residential area or in like a border area where you could build some residential. It's not just like in the middle of an industrial park that's not in a flood zone, or maybe it could be in a flood zone. Maybe you could just be like, this is your affordable house. If there's a flood, I hope you get out. Of course, they're not going to do that. Like they talk about red tape and we get there. That's not one of the ones where they're going to compromise. So let's say they find this pristine piece. Now we're in a rate cutting cycle with the Fed. This is just another random thing that comes up. So the metrics as the project is going along, if rates are coming down, and salaries in the city are staying the same, and the 30-year interest rate is actually coming down, it changes the metrics. So there will be people who at one point qualify that now no longer qualify if we're in a rate cutting cycle over the next couple of years. Let's say we went up for 2 and we'll go down for 2. So that's kind of wild to think about. Like how do you figure out how many units you need to build if we're in this constant state of like what's happening right now? Up, down. This is one of my favorite parts. Let's not even bring a builder into this yet, but let's say that somehow there's some sort of agency that is going to start working on permits for these things, right? And they're going to go to like Metro. Let's just use Nashville for an example. And they're going to go to Stormwater and they're going to go, now listen, Stormwater, we've got a 40-acre site and we're going to build 4,000 condo units there. And we don't want to have any stormwater on it. And Stormwater is going to go, not a chance. You know why? Because all the people that live downstream where you're going to be dumping stormwater onto them are going to call us for the next 15 years. And we're not interested in that. So you have to put in stormwater. And they should put in stormwater because that's kind of a ridiculous one to even think about getting rid of. But what if we got rid of like sewer mains? Let's say there's 4,000 extra units here. We're just going to stick with that metric. We're going to take the main out of those units and we're going to just pop it into the main on the street. And the engineers who look at this thing and they go, no, that's not going to work either because you're adding 4,000 residential units to this one piece of property that's tying into a sewer system that is not rated for that. You think that's a piece of red tape that they're going to get around? Nope, not going to get around that one either. How about fire? Like, can we get rid of some egress windows and doors? Nope, that's not going to happen either. Any large commercial structure, they're going to absolutely want to make sure that there's no possibility for liability. They're going to demand all the upgraded electrical stuff that you have to do. They're going to demand fire escapes. They're going to have exit signs. You're going to have fire alarms hardwired throughout the thing. If it's an entire building, they're going to make you put sprinkler systems in it. When they say they're going to cut red tape, I don't see what red tape they're going to cut, because what they're going to think is these things are important. Insulation, we could go back to like 1970s insulation, which is almost none. You think they're going to do that? No, they're not. They're not. There's no red tape that they can reasonably cut that's going to do anything unless they say, here's a special group of people who will be able to look at your permit as a group and decide on everything and then issue you the permit. Those types of people do not exist at scale. That's the problem. If Nashville wanted to put that type of group together for 1 or 2 projects where they could just say, we're going to spend a half day in a room, we're all going to look at this thing, we're going to just knock it out. The engineers are verifying the work from the other engineers. They could do it. They're talking 3 million houses that I propose she's thinking about doing. Is it over the next 10 years? Surely she's not going to say they're going to try to do it in her first 4 years. Surely it's going to be 10 years. That's still 300,000 units per year more than what we're building. For reference, America has built on average right around 1.2 million houses per year. So even if she stretches it out with the full force and talent and profit motive of the private market pushing forward, 1.2 million new units is all we're getting. Do you think that it's possible to juice another 300,000 out every single year? No. The answer is no. What about OSHA? I bet they'd let us get rid of OSHA, though. They'd probably just let dudes like crawl all over the outside of that thing, just on ladders, no straps, no safety wire across the top, no vest. Every circular saw is going to just be wide open. Sidewalks on the site. Like in Nashville, they require a sidewalk system and curb and gutter on each side of the road. They're going to require a sidewalk around the entire outside to tie into the neighbors. But in an affordable area, they're going to be like, nah, you don't have to. Could we use gravel instead of asphalt on the interior? Like if we have 4,000 units, could we have a gravel parking lot everywhere? Like, you see how absurd this sounds? When you start thinking about the compromises that can be made, they will view this as a massive compromise in standards, and they will say, if you try to do this, you're being mean to the people that you are trying to put in these units. Because if you say, we're not putting in air conditioning, they're going to go, it gets to 100 degrees in Nashville. You have to put in frickin' air conditioning and insulation, and the drywall can't be the crazy Chinese drywall that poisons people. Okay, that's fair. I want to back up just a second, and I want to think about how daunting the planning of this is. Because let's say it is 300,000 new units over 10 years, so per year. What are the areas that you assume would need more affordable houses? They're the areas that we all hear about every single day. Manhattan, San Francisco, Honolulu, Boston, Washington, Seattle, San Jose, San Diego, LA, Sacramento, Portland, Tampa, Denver, Atlanta, Chicago, Miami, Raleigh, Philadelphia, North Carolina, Nashville, Tucson, Pittsburgh, Minneapolis, Dallas, and Indianapolis. That's the top 25 most expensive major metropolitan areas in the United States. How many of those cities have federal land where it could actually be useful? Like, I wonder about New York. You think the federal government owns a ton of extra land in New York that they're going to be able to park 30,000 additional people? 40,000 additional people? It'd be super easy to just go into the middle of nowhere, Nevada, and build a bunch of units, but that's not useful. So as they're figuring out the metrics, they're trying to balance the resources that the federal government has, because that's where it's going to go, is federal land, unless they want to pay the states for state land. Then they're trying to balance demand for that product, because if you build too much of it, what do you get? You depress the housing prices in that area. If you don't build enough of it, you're just basically you're in a little bit better spot than you were in, but not like an amazing spot. To figure out that balancing act of the federal land that's here versus the demand for the product versus the salaries versus estimated build cost for the area versus the entry, like just figuring all that stuff out is going to take years for a very motivated group of federal employees, which makes it's going to take even longer because I don't know many very motivated federal employees. Let's assume that somehow they get all this stuff figured out. They figure out the balance. They figure out the areas. They figure out the permits, they figure out what things to compromise on, where, there's dudes just like up there, 6 stories up, painting on ladders that are duct taped together. So OSHA, maybe they got rid of OSHA. Who will do the actual building of these units? So you may say, well, it's going to be builders. Okay. What are builders already doing right now? They're building other projects. So while there can be some sort of ramp up and some sort of training process that's going on while the planning of this is happening, how much can we really increase the workforce in construction in 2 years? Let's say it's a year, let's say it's 2 years, let's say it's 3 years. How much can you really increase it? And then competent people that are actually able to execute and build large projects, they are going to be basically taken from other retail projects that they were working on or that they were going to be working on. They're going to be now working on this like great affordable housing project that's going on for the next 10 years. What happens to all those other projects that were going to go on? Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. They're either not going to get done, which means another segment of the market is not going to be served, which means even fewer housing units are going to be put on the market, or the shift is going to be much higher. They're going to only focus on significantly higher end, and it's only going to be worth it because you're going to have to pay the people who are working on those units significantly more money to pull them off of some sort of government job, government program, government team, however they're going to structure it for building an affordable thing, to stay over here. There's no bottom end. The affordable housing thing, all you're dealing with on the low end is guys that are unlicensed in trucks that are leaking oil all over the roads, like just disaster humans, right? The type of contractors that nobody wants to deal with. So that's what you've just done. Segmented the labor market. Low end gets extremely low end guys. The people that are going to be building this mid-level affordable housing stuff, like mid to low end, they're the people who are good managers. So they're going to get pulled off of projects that are significantly more expensive. Like I'm talking, if they're building let's say $400,000 average price units, and maybe they're going to be even cheaper than that. I bet you're pulling general contractors and developers and engineers away from projects that are going up to like $900,000. I bet you get this absolute gap because it doesn't make sense. If you can go build one of these affordable projects where the federal government is giving you land and you're figuring out your margins, there's a huge amount of safety in that. There's going to be a lot of demand for that type of product as a person who is providing the labor. I would love to go do a safety project, which means I'm going to be neglecting my other projects. I'm going to be selling that land, or I'm going to be just putting it on hold for now, not going to be building it. Or if it falls in the right category, it's going to be super high end. I'm paying artisan contractors to get the thing done. I'm not paying Billy Bob to go over there and do it. What does that mean for you as a regular homeowner who just wants to get stuff done? The demand for labor for just a home renovation project is going to be impossible to find. You'll be in the Billy Bob category. You'll have a $700,000 house and you'll have a dude who hasn't bathed in 2 weeks coming in to try to mess with your dishwasher. If you're in one of the cities where the labor has been sucked up like a freaking vacuum into these affordable housing projects, that's exactly what will happen. Oh, we're not done though. Let's talk about material. So whenever there is more demand for a product, what happens? The product goes up in price. And what we're talking about, even if it's the 300,000 new units a year, which is 10 years worth, which by the way, barely puts a dent in what actually needs to be built over the next 10 years to actually get more housing supply. It's crazy how far behind we are. Let's say the metric is still the 300,000 units per year over 10 years. When you put that type of pressure on cabinet makers from all around the world, I'm talking major manufacturing stuff that's coming out of China, Taiwan, the Philippines, everywhere that there is, massive, huge warehouses that are shipping cabinets over by the freaking shipping container full to the United States. Lumber. That's a commodity. Like, that's so crazy to think about. Lumber goes high and stays high because the demand that is created by the federal government being a constant buyer for this stuff, which means if you have a personal project that you want done on your house, what's happening? You're having to pay a buttload more for those products. How much more? I have no idea. I have no idea. I would assume that what would happen, and it's probably market-based even in the city and state, because I would imagine that some of the projects in these states could be so big that local cabinet makers, everybody who possibly could get qualified, would want to jump on board. Because if the government is not offering some sort of premium for labor to go do that work, the work's not going to get done. And then when they run for re-election, they have to say, we only built 8 of the supercharging stations, and I know that we've passed $7.5 billion, and we've only got 8 of them. Maybe you'll still reelect me anyway. This video is not meant to be political. It's more to just show how sad, honestly, and kind of ridiculous even the thought of saying we're going to build 3 million more housing units in the United States is. It seems like a thing that we need. But I don't think that we can do it this way. If you try to pack it in too quickly, all you do is just set off a massive flood of unintended consequences that pour all the way down the line. Honestly, it would probably be close to cataclysmic for housing for the next 2 decades. That's my opinion. Because when you really extrapolate out all of these issues and what it does and how it distorts the market, think about at the end of this 10-year period, think about what happens after cabinet companies have ramped up and flooring companies have ramped up and these huge factories have been built because they've got this runway set ahead of them of years and years, right? I mean, I'm assuming if it's going to take years, maybe they even say it's going to take a little bit longer. There will be significant amounts of infrastructure that are built, warehouses, factories, trucking, shipping, all this type of stuff that is going to be built and put in place. And then when the project is done, what happens? Those people are laid off? All the people that got trained to do this, now the 30% extra that we've needed every year, now we're just trimming those people, the 30% of people? Or does everybody just take a 30% pay cut? It's not just bad at the beginning, it's bad in the middle, and it's terrible at the end. Because the end where the fall off happens is where you see, for example, in oil boom towns and in coal boom towns, where you see massive amounts of infrastructure that gets built really quick to serve the guys that are doing the work there. And then when the work is done, there's just a random 400-unit hotel in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. That is what America becomes when you allow some sort of central planning to so heavily influence a major market sector in the United States. I've gotten more depressed as I've been shooting this video. I don't really know how to end the video. Let's hope that they don't do this, but I want more affordable housing. Rock in a hard place. Hey, if you're flipping houses and you need a hard money loan, please check us out, NashvilleMoneyGuys.com. My name is Brandon McDonald. Thanks for watching.